Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Kevin Tulloch Marson, and it is my pleasure as president of the Society for American Soccer History, also known as SASH, to welcome you to our July 2026 First Friday session, the second to last one before our summer break. Founded in 1993, SASH works to promote, facilitate, and disseminate research into the rich history and heritage of soccer in the United States. You can find us best in two places, on the web at ussoccerhistory.org and on all of our social media accounts, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter X, Blue Sky. Please follow these sessions at hashtag FFSS and post about them so we can repost from our SASH accounts. A reminder that our SASH website has a wonderful collection of digitized resources ranging from across the planet and featuring fascinating clips of American soccer heritage. And in that, we encourage you to support our ongoing crowdfunding campaign to digitize more material and showcase U.S. soccer history. All of our sessions will be available on YouTube and as podcasts. And if you are working on something that you might like to present at a future SASH First Friday session, then please reach out to the communications director at SASH or the board. All ideas are welcome from current or future members to be. Or if a shorter format is more interest to you, please just to float some ideas in less than 20 minutes, then we certainly would organize shorter sessions with several speakers in a panel format. And if writing is more your thing, then please, we welcome written contributions for the SASH website on all areas of soccer-related history. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. And if you're not a member, please join SASH through the website. We welcome new members with open arms and friendly feet. Please visit the website and click on the Join SASH tab so you'll be eligible to receive our newsletter. Our speaker today is Dr. Mark Franek from the YSA Academy. Dr. Franek holds a BA in English and Master's in Teaching from Duke, as well as a doctorate in Educational Leadership from the UPenn, and a degree in law from Temple, as well as having worked as a litigator for 6 years. As a player, coach, and educator, Dr. Franek has a long experience, which includes a varsity stint at Duke, 6 seasons as a semi-pro in Iceland, and having served as captain of the Philadelphia Ukrainian Nationals. His teaching experience spans youth and university levels at the Montgomery Academy in Alabama, the William Penn Charter School in Philadelphia, also having served as visiting professor at Philadelphia University, which is now Thomas Jefferson University, and Cabrini College. And he's also been an instructor at UPenn's Graduate School of Education. Mark teaches also at the YSC Academy, the YSC Academy, the independent college preparatory school founded by Unite Union minority owner Richie Graham in 2013. And it's embedded in the Philadelphia Union's academy system. And that is what Mark will be speaking about today. Part of that academy program includes a year-long course on the history of American soccer. So, Mark, we are thrilled to have you today to talk about this educational experience. The floor is yours.
Okay, Kevin, thank you very much for that glorious introduction. I haven't been called Dr. Franek that many times in 20 years. Usually it's coming from my students who are grouchy and asking Mr. Franek, yo, don't give us any more homework for tomorrow. So thank you for that. Let me go back a slide here and restart and thank first off SASH and the Herculean efforts that all of you here listening or who might stumble across this cast in the future have done and continue to do for American soccer. The people, many of those who are just logged in, I'm familiar with your work. I've kind of been silently behind the scenes percolating and drilling down into the SASH website. And congratulations, of course, to all of us who are engaged in writing about soccer, teaching, whether it's at high school or college level, or just any part of the American soccer tent. So thank you, and thank you for this time. Since I'm a teacher, I rarely talk for more than 5 minutes at a time, because when I try to do that at YSC Academy, kids, their hair is on fire, and they're asking to go to the bathroom. So this is unusual for me, but I want to start with maybe about a 20 to 25-minute sprint, go through a couple background information, and then reset and get into the classroom environment, which is what this presentation is all about. Teaching American soccer history, if you will, and writing about soccer for elite student athletes. So yes, thank you for Kevin, for allowing me to have this slide up. First, I wrote this book. It was a glorious 3-year sprint for me. I've written a lot for the newspaper, used to have a column for the Philadelphia Inquirer, but this is really my first true full-length manuscript. And as you can see, it's not a vanity project. It's got this great publisher, Ben Bella, Simon & Schuster's distributing it. And I'm really fortunate to have had many accolades already from athletes, which kind of makes me feel great. The fact that I've been able to harness this 20, 30-year career of teaching and coaching and knowing people to have them now bring into kind of a literary academic setting. And yes, some of these players actually read the book. Like, I can't say that maybe Brennan Aronson and Austin and Mark read it because they were on the sprint to the World Cup in the last 6 months. But yeah, I've just been gloriously blessed with people who have given me some wonderful accolades there. So let me show you where I am right now. That'll give listeners kind of a context of about what I'm going to talk about later in this presentation. I currently teach at YSC Academy. The Academy is its independent school that's embedded completely within the Philadelphia Union franchise. Even though it is independent, meaning we could teach ballerinas, we could teach lacrosse players, we could teach just about any type of student, but Richie Graham, the founder, embedded it with the union, and it has developed a relationship over the last 13 years for the union. So 95% of the students at YSC Academy are also within the Philadelphia Union franchise, their youth academy. So here I am in my classroom. This is my classroom, and just see how lucky. This is so cool. So, 6 months ago when I think during the Gold Cup, maybe that was a year ago, a summer ago, these guys were using the WSFIS in the Philadelphia Union facilities, the USSF, and the players were there. And two of these guys who graduated, Mark McKenzie on the right there on your screen, and Brendan Aronson, walked over to see the quote unquote new school. The school's been around for 13 years, but it moved from like a small doctor's office type environment down to this fully beautiful modern school within 200 yards of the stadium. So here these guys show up in my class, and my students go nuts. And how wonderful it is. I want you to imagine being a 13-year-old in the 9th grade in this school. You're down there, you're living the dream, you're training in the morning, you're getting your academic classes loaded and compressed into the middle of the day. You have your math, your science, your English, your history, your Spanish, if you will, and a couple online AP classes as you get older, and you're living the dream. And in the afternoon, you're training. And on the weekend, you're playing other MLS teams. And on the weekend, because you happen to know some of the pros, you're getting free tickets to go to the game. You are truly a remarkable environment. And part of my book and presentation gets into it. Why not? Why can't more MLS teams? We don't need all 30 doing what the Philadelphia Union is doing, but why not get best practices going? Why can't 5 to 7 of the the MLS teams and the deep-pocketed owners really put money, time, and energy and some risk into youth development? So allow me to go through this presentation quickly. I'm going to spend 5 minutes or less, a little quick bio. It's a little bit of a vanity thing for a couple minutes. Then I'm going to get into the YSC Academy, my actual classroom environment. And then I'm going to drill down literally into some examples of how I try to teach American soccer history, particularly on the level of writing, because I see myself as more of a writing teacher than a teacher of history. I'm an English teacher. Yes, I'm charged with teaching this 4-year course on American soccer history, but for me, it's more of a writing class. So just get that out of the way. And then I'll show some of the stuff that I'm doing and have done in my class that may bring up some kids that you might know, because they're not kids anymore. Now they're full pros. But when I knew them, they were in 9th grade English class. And of course, we'll get to a Q&A, which I hope to, of course, leave a lot of time for. So a couple of vanity shots. I grew up in York, Pennsylvania. I was born into this place that is not a hotbed of soccer. Right there in 1985, you can see me playing for Eastern York Public High School, right when shin guards weren't allowed. I'm there in the white there, PIAA. This is pre-shin guard rules. I'm probably fouling this guy here. I was the son of an English teacher. I'm sorry. My mom was an English teacher, and my dad was an engineer for Caterpillar Tractor Company. And boy, did I get lucky, because I went to camp soccer camp. That was the only way to get noticed right back in the 80s. I went to a Duke soccer camp my junior year and did really well for that week and must have caught the eyes of the then coach John Reddy and made my way over here to the Duke University. I had number 13. I don't know if you can see me because it's I'm over there on the right, probably behind Thomas McCabe on my son. You can tell that I didn't play very much. Why? Because I have number 13. Number 13 is after all the other guys gets the numbers that they want. The only one left in the equipment room was 13. I didn't play so much. And in fact, in this photograph, I'm the only guy smiling. I didn't know that it was not cool to smile when you're getting a soccer photograph. But yeah, I played. I had a glorious time. And towards the end of my senior year, I started volunteering in Durham to teach local disadvantaged youth. And the only thing I could do to teach them was English because I was getting a major in English and I really caught the teaching bug. So for all those listeners now and maybe stumble across this path, yeah, what do you do when you're 23 and you have no skills, right? It's not an engineering degree. I'm a teacher of English. I sent out my resume across America and I wanted to teach English, but I wanted to also be the varsity soccer coach. I didn't want to be the JV soccer coach, and I did not want to be the ninth grade soccer coach. And the only school that would hire me at 23 years old was this tiny little independent school called Montgomery Academy. That's down here on the right, Montgomery Academy in downtown Montgomery. You know, Route 95 goes the whole way to Maine and it stops in downtown Montgomery. So here I am, a transplanted Yankee from York, Pennsylvania, trying to teach basically very conservative kids in a very conservative background. And I'm a super liberal. So I didn't get myself fired that first year. And I went and taught at Montgomery Academy for 4 years. But during the summers, I got to know some guys in Montgomery from Auburn University and from the University of Alabama that were recruited there from Iceland. They were Icelandic student athlete college players, and they invited me to Iceland over the summer. So I just want to sprint through 20 years of teaching from 23 to 43. I basically had a spool of really great setup. My wife even teases me today, how can you be so lucky to do pretty much what you want to do and center your life around things that are fun? I love teaching. I love playing soccer. I like thinking of playing soccer. And for years there, I would go to Iceland every year and play semi-pro in Iceland. So here I am, Montgomery Academy for 4 years. Then I moved to Philadelphia, the William Penn Charter School. Some people might know it's one of the oldest independent schools in the United States. It's probably third behind Boston Latin and Collegiate, and then the William Penn Charter School founded by William Penn. And then for my summers, I would dart off to Iceland. And here's a picture of a youth little tournament there. Beautiful country, by the way. Wonderful pre-internet days. No one's bothering me from June 15th to August 20th till I go back. And then when I was back in Philadelphia, I would play for the Philadelphia Ukrainian Nationals, which is no slouch. People may recall that they won, if I'm not mistaken, 4 Open Cups, Lamar Hunt Open Cups in the 60s. And my coach for many years then in the 90s actually played on some of those teams. So it was a great little entree into coming to Philadelphia where I hadn't grown up. And as you know, people here know that Philadelphia is just a hotbed. You can't, if you're a soccer person, you can't go more than a mile without bumping into someone who's a soccer wonderful person and player or just knows people. So yeah, I did that for 20 years. And I put over here this little quote just for my dad, who I think is on this show here, my 86-year-old father who's listening to me. Yes, I became a lawyer for about 6 to 7 years. The first thing we do is kill all the lawyers. Some of the academic people here might know that that is not really a dig on lawyers. It was written by a butcher in Henry VII, Part 2, as a way to overthrow the then crown. And to do that, the first thing they needed to do was to kill the lawyers because that they knew that the lawyers were one of the last bastions of law and order. But yeah, I went and became a lawyer for 6 years. And I can't say that I hated every minute of it, but it's not pleasant getting assignments on Friday night when you have a son's tournament on Saturday and Sunday, and it doesn't matter how much money they pay you, you're really owned by somebody else. And I did that for 6 or 7 years before I came back to YSC Academy. The brief version there is I walked in to get Quinn Sullivan's Quinn Sullivan is a pro player for the Philadelphia Union. He's been capped. And I know his father, Brendan, and this is a big soccer family from Philadelphia. I went in to get to the school because it's located right near my house to get Quinn's signature. And I ran into the head of the school there who had remembered me from my Penn Charter days, if you will. And it's another story about the power of connection. I'm certain that people who are listening now and later, the idea of who you are and who you were as the years and decades roll on, and the understanding that particularly within the soccer tent, the power of human connection and human stories and how your lives intertwine, and the fact that we're all playing on the same team. So after an hour of being in the building, I realized she was actually vetting me for a possible job because she knew I could teach English, and she was trying to figure out if I was happy being a lawyer. As it turned out, I was not happy being a lawyer, and she offered me the job. And after consulting with my boss, my wife, we decided at the tail end of my career, after racking up all these degrees, I was going to end up right back where I started at 23, and that is in a classroom. But this classroom was different because, in addition to being able to teach 4 classes a day to 40 students, that's all I had. 10 kids per classroom, all living the dream, trying to become professional soccer players. 20% will go pro, the other 80% are going to college, often on a soccer scholarship. In addition to that, my boss said, Mark, I want you to develop and then teach a history of US soccer class because our kids don't seem to know that much about their own history. And I said, what? You're crazy. You're what, right? You're going to pay me to do this? Yes. So that is the story there. I'm going to show a promo video. Guys, let's not complain about it. It's a promo. It's going to be a minute video. I just want to give you a taste of the environment that the kids are in and the environment that I'm in that's going to help do a bridge to the classroom experiences that I'm going to get into in the next couple of minutes. So this is a promo video. Let's turn the volume on. Okay. Now, the school. Whoops, let me see if I can turn that off. Sorry, guys. So the school was founded by Richard Graham 13 years ago, where it used to be a muddy swamp and a gravel parking lot. Now there exists Subaru Park. That's the stadium. They have the new Wisfis Sportsplex, which is a multiple $50 million building that has wonderful weightlifting and fields and everything. And then this school that's tucked away at the power plant. And that's what you're seeing here. I'm going to do another 2-minute video to give you a tour of the school virtually from a student. Going to skip a couple parts, but it's 3 to 4 minutes long. Just watch and get a sense of the background, what's going on in and around the school. Recall, who are these kids? They're coming from everywhere, mostly from the tri-state area, but really from all around the country. 95% of them are Americans, student athletes, 8th grade through 12th grade, 85 students, 95% of them are going to the Philadelphia Union Academy. All of them, I think 98% of them, if they don't sign a pro contract, they go on to college. So this is just the student tour here, 2-3 minutes.
What's up, guys? I'm Henry Bernstein, midfielder for the Union U18s and Philadelphia Union 2. Come check out YC Academy with me. I joined YC it was the 2020 school year. So it was actually different for me. I joined when we were on Zoom, but in the building. That was in 8th grade, and I've been here. So that's 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and now I'm a senior, graduating in a few months. So it's pretty crazy.
How do YSC and the academy work together to help you balance the busy lifestyle?
Yeah, they are constantly talking, making sure you're not missing class, or if you are missing class for a second practice, that you're able to catch up on work at a different time. So this is the kitchen. You're actually catching it at the quietest time, I think, of the day. If you come in here right after practice, they usually have breakfast sandwiches out for us every day. Same thing with lunch. Everyone's in here using the microwaves. In between classes, you can just pop in, grab something all the time. Have every resource. Here's one of Mr. Sullivan's history classes. Let's take a step in. Some might know him as Quinn and Cavan's dad. Those classes are usually a little louder and with some enthusiastic debates, but it seems like they were all working on a presentation or something. My favorite class right now, a few of the seniors are taking a film and literature class, and we have done some skits and watched some movies in class, and kind of learned how to work behind a camera, in front of a camera. What is your favorite place to study here on since? The pods are a new great addition that we just added in. You can take a look in here. It's just noise canceling pod that you can have some time to your own if you need some quiet time. This is a new addition to the school, the YFC graduate wall. My face will be up there along with the other seniors next year. And so yeah, we've got all the classes from the first year, which was in 2015, so all the way from 2015 to 2024. And then I guess there's still some room for much more classes to come through. Probably going to need a bigger wall soon though.
Okay, there you go. It takes you to the school. Now let's talk about, I'm in the school, I teach English 9th and 10th graders. So what? They're 15 to 16 years old. Now let's just drill down into what I do to teach history, the soccer history. Again, it's really hard to describe an entire 9-month class. I just want to give you the taste of what happens. So briefly, the first class I have with 9th graders who are often new to the building. Some of these kids are public school, private school. Some are coming from poor backgrounds, rich backgrounds. You don't have, you never know where they're coming from in terms of their academic engine. The first assignment I always do is ask them to describe the best teacher or coach they've ever had. Okay, the best teacher coach they've ever had. And then need to write a story about it. Then that becomes the first portfolio project in my class. Everybody has teachers or coaches. And if kids are going to stall me, I hate all my coaches, I hate all my teachers, then I say, okay, write about your worst one. And that's the funniest, because sometimes I've gotten great stories from kids who are writing about a really bad teacher. But the point in my class is on day one, the point that I try to underscore for them, these student athletes, and whether they were student athletes at this building or any student I've ever taught, even when I was teaching in a more conventional high school, is the idea that everybody has a story worth telling. And we're not going to be doing worksheets in my class. We're not going to be doing fill in the blanks in my class. We're going to be doing writing, and we're going to be doing authentic stuff and pieces. And those pieces become a part of our portfolio, right? Everybody knows what a portfolio is, right? Every kid in my class gets a folder. And as we write throughout the year, they print out their pieces, or we're doing a lot of handwriting now to get away from ChatGPT. The folders grow increasingly thick throughout the year on all different kinds of pieces. My class, soccer related, soccer identity, soccer stories, if you will. So that's what a portfolio is. I'm going to explain a little bit later what the chapbook is, but portfolios, all sentence form, paragraph form, stories that they're willing to stand behind, read out loud, talk about, allow me to drill down a little bit more when they're sharing them out loud. Okay, so here's an example of an actual writing prompt that I've done, not using American soccer stuff. I can do that too, but I just want to show you an example of a real student and a real writing assignment. So say we're 2 months into the year. Here's an example using Players Tribune. So you're in my class, you're 10th grade, you're 15. Some of you are on the national team. There's 20 of you. Tonight, right? So, well, today's Friday. So yeah, Friday, I'll give you the assignment. This weekend, I want you to log on to the Players Tribune. I want you to read this article by Martin Odegaard. Now look, look how cool this is for them. First off, the Players Tribune is a wonderful free site. The athletes themselves are writing these first person narratives, and they're rich with detail and photographs because 15-year-olds love photographs. So the kids over the weekend will read this wonderful story that's embedded with photographs, which underscores what I'm going to ask them to do eventually. They're going to write and create their own stories like what they're literally looking at with embedded photographs like what these superstars are doing. But you got to read it and then come into class on Monday. And maybe on Monday, they're going to get a quiz on it, real quick quiz, because I've got to make sure that they've read it. And then comes the beauty part in my class. If I'm good at anything in the world, it's teaching writing to young people. So it is not that complicated. Every writer, every teacher, every professor has their own bag of writing tricks. This is just mine. Hey, first paragraph, right? And Odegaard tells the readers a story about growing up in Drammen, Norway, and goes into detail about a tiny artificial field right next to his house where he basically lived, etc. I then say, describe your earliest pitch or field that you can remember playing on. Where was it? What was it called? Describe in detail. Now, the kids then in class, a lot of times I'm having them write this out in cursive or printing it because of computer technology. I'll get that in a second. But let's just scroll down to the answer. So kids can now see what their other peers are writing. That creates an audience immediately for them. This technology is being used by teachers in high school, middle school, even on up into the professors. It's called Canvas. There's different modules, but kids can now see these intertwined conversations. So every student name you're seeing here is a member of my class and a member of the 10th graders. So you scroll down here to Maximos. Here's his answer. I thought this was pretty interesting, right? This is Max Carl. He said, I grew up in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in an apartment building where the hallways were my first real field. The corridor was narrow and long with smooth tile floors that made the ball skid quickly, and the walls were so close that every bad touch bounced right back at you. I played there almost every day, using shoes or backpacks as goals, hearing the echo of the ball, my own footsteps bouncing around the building. Sometimes neighbors' kids would join me, and sometimes it was just me, pressing passes against the wall and pretending I was in a real stadium. On that field, I learned close control, quick reactions, and how to be creative with small spaces. And my best memory there is scoring a game-winning goal in a hallway match with friends and celebrating like it was the World Cup final. That's good writing for a 15-year-old. Reads a story about Odegaard, comes in. I know that he didn't chat GPT this because he wrote, I have the hard copy of this. I won't go through all these, just look at the next one. Everybody can ask any kind of question they want. But the next one is, okay, here's one. One of the biggest situations in which I'm sorry, go back to the question. Second paragraph of this article talks about Odegaard's first couple years at Real Madrid, where he wasn't getting first team playing time. He was bouncing around between teams. He explains it in his article. Well, I want to use that as a transition to get them to talk about the struggles that they've had at the Union Academy, because they all have them. Now, listen, can I do this in September? Of course not. They need to learn how to trust me. And that's part of the joy of being a teacher. You have to create an environment, of course, where they take you seriously as a teacher. I have a little bit of chops because of all those things I've talked to you about. Someone who played at Duke and played for the Ukrainian Nationals. I'm relatively fit and I can talk the talk with them. That gives me instant credibility. And now we're reading and writing about soccer. But this is a little bit tough, right? Talk about a time when you were vulnerable. Scroll down in here. This guy, young man, African-American, Timoni, he's on the national team. He talks here in this second paragraph, a difficult time when I was playing up. So he was so good that he was playing a year up, which Coach Henry Apollo, he's a coach on our staff here, and I was not getting enough minutes, and I felt like he was choosing other players, it hurt my confidence. And he goes through in this paragraph and he talks about how he got his confidence back when he went to Europe and played with another coach and realized that he wasn't going to have the same coach year after year. And he just had to put the same amount of energy into every practice, whether he's getting playing time, if you will. Last paragraph, I won't go through it, but it's just, okay, in this story, I always like to find intersections that are not related to soccer, right? That are just goofy, because that's part of being in a writing class too. Odegaard shows up for his first interview in Madrid wearing a jumper Okay, it's a goofy jumper back here, and it's really funny. And he barely spoke English. I call up the interview that he gave because he could barely speak English, and he answered like an eighth grader here. And then I asked the kids to sound off about a time when they did something really dumb or embarrassing, the PG version. So that's cool. It's just kind of, teachers write a bag of writing tricks. They get to trust you. So what does that become? It becomes a portfolio piece, a handwritten piece. It's digitized. It's also handwritten, and it goes into that folder in the back of the room that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, how do I teach American soccer history? Well, that's tricky. What I do is I try to use surveys, primarily from David Wangeren's book, as you know, The Godfather for All of Us. It's the archetype. It's the best book perhaps ever written about the history of American soccer. Of course, what David couldn't do was go back into the 1800s too much, because a lot of the resources weren't digitized when he was writing that book in the early 2000s, right? He didn't have digitization to the degree we have today about the college yearbooks, a lot of the newspapers, and a lot of stuff that's been uncovered in the last 20 years, nor could he, since he passed away in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, really see the rise of the MLS and the future of where we're going on an optimistic pathway. So that's part of what my book does. So I teach from my book. I teach from other books. I call up the SASH website. I give an assignment in that Canvas environment. Read Roger Holloway's piece on X or Ed Farnsworth piece on Y. Read it. Come into class, take a quiz on it, then write me 3 paragraphs. I oftentimes do things in 3 paragraphs, and then we jump off maybe if we want to write a longer piece. For example, here's an example. I'm not going to give you an example of the student writing. I'll give you an example of the assignment. Most of the archivists and historians here and soccer aficionados, we know about this wonderful 10-year or so American Soccer League, this great professional or semi-professional but really remarkable league, right? On the northeast quarter of the United States, from Philadelphia on up to Kearney, Brooklyn, Falls River, Pawtucket, Boston, that wonderful 250 mile stretch. So listen, they're going to read a couple pieces over a 2-day period, but when they come into class, then the first paragraph might be, well, describe the American Soccer League. When did it get started? What teams were in it? And what was the level of play? That could be its own assignment. The second paragraph could be Archie Stark, okay? I could have a couple pieces on Archie Stark. Fascinating figure, right? Get Tom McCabe stuff, some Brian Bunk stuff. That goes back in the 1800s. Wherever I am, I get these pieces, read it, come in, talk about it, but then write about it in a way that's interesting. And here's the second paragraph might be, okay, Archie Stark. Talk about his 1924 to 25 year. What does it mean to score 67 goals prior to when the offsides rule was changed from having 3 people behind the ball to 2? And then we might spend 30 minutes talking about that. How can a center referee at the time, or any referee, ever call offsides when there had to be 3 people behind the ball? So we could get off on a topic on VAR. That might become a something to write about. But we're back to the ASL, right? Because as a teacher, you just need to feel the flow. And what I care about is writing. I care about interest. I care about stories. I care about excitement, because these guys don't have time to listen to people lecture at them. Hey, the third paragraph, this is a cool one. All these cool names for the ASL teams, right? The Gold Bugs, the Clam Diggers, the Floors, the Hokas, the Wonder Workers, the Steelmen. Come up with your own name for a soccer team, right? Give it a nickname. Hire the best coach and pick 10 players. Write a story with paragraphs that have something to do, something that stemmed from the 20s, and now it's a side project, and it becomes another type of a writing thing. I mean, come on. My kids in the program, how lucky are these kids? Right? They're going to play soccer. Now we're talking about soccer in my class. Now, not every writing assignment comes off. Yeah, they're duds. And yeah, it's tough sometimes to get kids to write. They're 13, 14, 15 years old. And here's another thing. For those of you, maybe some of you guys are well aware of what I'm about ready to show you, but I just want to show you something that is fascinating that all of us are having to deal with now with ChatGPT, okay? So remember my writing prompt that I just showed you here? Here's the stuff that I wrote, and I do this every week. They're writing about something different. Say the kid goes to practice. He's in my class, didn't do the work, but he went to practice in the morning, takes his shower at the $50 million Witness, walks over to the building. His peers say, oh, did you do Mr. Franek's homework? He said, oh, I didn't do it, but I have a way of doing it. He comes into the building, gets himself a bagel. He copies the questions, right? He copies the questions and he goes here to ChatGPT. You guys might know this, right? And I'm going to write here, write me a 3-paragraph story as a student athlete from Philly answering this, colon. I don't even have to spell this, right? And then I give up my prompt. People are aware of this, right? And click return. How can you stop this type of stuff, right? For the professors that are listening to it now and later, or teachers or anybody who tries to teach writing to anybody, this has been written about, right? We're in a new world where this now they just copy and paste this in and wash their hands of it, which is why I now almost always make kids write things by hand. Come into my classroom, put your phone in the box over there, put your computer on the desk over there. Here's some paper. We complain. They rage bait me for a couple minutes and complain because, oh my God, we got to write. Yeah, a piece of paper and a good old pen and a pencil, and then answer the questions, because you can't fight this stuff. This ChatGPT generated stuff, you cannot come up with a question as a teacher, a professor, or an historian that can't be answered quickly and almost authentically, because it's hard to find. That's why when you get to know kids, I'm always tying it to something that happened in the building so that I know that it's true. But ChatGPT can almost fake that. Something that happened in their home, it can almost be faked. I just want to throw that out there for those of us who are in the environment trying to teach something to somebody, getting them to write in this new age. It is an incredibly difficult proposition, but I do my best. We also do some fun stuff, right? It's not all essays. Here's another one. The end of the ASL, right, had this 1-2 punch. The internal battle with Charles Stoneham and the administrators, and they screwed it up and, got themselves as an outlaw league with the then USSF. And then you have the Great Depression. And as a more formal essay could be, well, first paragraph, describe the ASL. Thesis statement, what led to its demise, whether it was the Great Depression or the internal soccer war, and then prove your point by using 3 body paragraphs with citations to some of the stuff that's on the SASH website and teaching them how to do MLA citations, right? All the stuff that I've just told you takes a month to teach almost, right? It takes time, but it's important. But there's also fun time in my class to do other stuff. And I'm just going to show you this one. It's boring to show an essay. Here, I always have students do a hand or a foot collage. It's rooted in their soccer lives, right? We've all drawn our own hand. Well, this assignment is make a colorful collage with your hand and any component, as long as it's not the middle finger. Ha, ha, ha. We'll get a big joke out of that. No, you can't use your middle finger. No, you can't do something stupid. Just draw your hand or a foot. Come up with one quote from a family member, one quote from a great soccer player or historian or writer, and another quote from any other piece in literature, and put it on your hand collage. We're going to tape these collages to the wall, and guess what? They're eventually going to go in your chapbook. Everything in your portfolio folder that you've been generating in my class and from around the classroom is going to become a book. So take a look at some of these. Andrew Craig, by the way, I'm looking at these things that kids did in 9th grade. They're all seniors now, graduating seniors. So I'm just going to shout out where they're going to college. In 9th grade, they didn't know what their lives were going to come. Andrew Craig's brother plays for Montreal. He's a pro player and a former national team player. Andrew Craig's going on a full ride to the University of Michigan. Peter Duran here, really cool artist. He did his foot. You can't really read that stuff in there, but he got some really cool quotes. Here you go, Cav Sullivan. I'll come back to Cav. Cav is that young phenom who's owned by Manchester United, who was loaned back to the MLS, that currently plays for the United States national team, U17 team, and is also now starting for us. But here he was as a 13-year-old he was actually a 12-year-old because his dad pushed him up. So he's in it with a bunch of ninth graders. He's quoting his dad. He's quoting Ronaldinho. Here's his family. He gets a razz by his brothers because they say, why did you color your hands like paint here like a little girl? That's when you're around type A male athletes. They're always ragging on people, but that's kind of cool. He's got a quote from Adam Sandler there. This kid here is going to Notre Dame. Connor Murphy, great for him. Rizzy Rowe, that's Rose Sullivan. Back in ninth grade, he had money on his mind. He was also playing for Delco at the time and eventually got picked up by the Union because everybody's pathway is different. So yeah, you just scroll through here and see all these hand collages, kind of fun stuff. Kellen LeBlanc here, his dad, oh, it's Declan. He's going to St. Joe's. Kellen LeBlanc down here, his dad is the head coach from SC Brooklyn. Connections, everybody is connected. So yeah, what happens in my English class throughout the year is a lot of writing, a lot of story time, stories, stand behind your work, stay away from digital automated stuff, and create authentic writing that's rooted in your everyday experiences. And my goodness, do they not have a lot to talk about? They have coaches, they have pressure, they have game tape, they have sometimes scouts that are looking at them. They have parents that are putting a lot of pressure on them. There's so many things that they have to write about, in addition to learning about their own incredible story, the 150-year story, American soccer story that many of us have spent part of our lives talking and writing about. So if that would be fine if everybody in my class just did a portfolio, and at the end of the year, I give them their folder with all their loose leaf pieces in it. A lot of teachers do it that way. I don't do it that way. I ramp it up. I want the kids to produce a book, a literal book. And now we're nearing the end of my presentation. So what is the book? In May, 1 month before graduation, I say, take all the pieces that's been accumulated in your folder and on your Google Drive and put them into a book form, literally a book form, a spiral bound book that they're going to go get bound at Staples. Okay, here's Cav Sullivan's book, right? Spiral bound. We've all seen these. Maybe we have some of these course packs for those professors, but I just don't want it bound at random. You guys have to do what real writers do. What does every book have? It has a cover. What's the next page in the book? It's got to have a title page, right? And in your title page, you have to have a design concept. You have to have an icon, a badge, a brand. Kids love this talk about branding. Yeah, you got to create a brand for your book. What comes after? I made this up over 20 years of teaching. What's the next page? A devotion. Most book devotions are an italicized sentence long. I don't want that. I want 2 pages. I want a story. Oh my gosh. And they figure out that most book only has like a italicized sentence. Well, yeah, but you're in my class and I'm telling you to do a story. I want 2 pages. I want a devotee. It can be your mom, your dad. Don't choose your mom if you think your dad's going to get mad. Vice versa. Don't choose your dad. Maybe you got to choose both of them. Make it 4 pages. Ah, Mr. Franek, you're killing me. Whatever. You write a story about a devotee. You have a quotation, because books have quotation pages, right? You have a quotation page. You have an introduction to the book. You have a table of contents. And then you have the contents of the book that reflects not only my classroom, but any other thing that they've done around the curriculum, or even notes that a coach might give them on the soccer side, or a note that a prior coach gave them before they entered the Union, or a note that their mom or dad wrote to them, or a brother or sister. It doesn't matter as long as they can put it in the chat book and not get me fired. As long as I can give it to the head of school or the head of the soccer side and they can pat me on the back and say, Mr. Franek, you deserve a raise. You can put anything in your book. So let me give you and finish now with just a few models. So Cav Sullivan here, I got 2. I'm just going to go through this quickly. We're not going to read the book or pieces from it. I just want to give you the visual version of what I was just holding up to get you a sense. So here's Cavin's. He's 12 years old at this time. 13 years old. So turning the page, listen, at the time, he didn't know he was going to go pro, but he was on Dortmund's radar. He's a high-end hotshot kid, but now he's putting together this chapbook. Here's his title page. Even then, I like to celebrate this. I've been around alpha males my entire life coaching-wise. I actually had the privilege of coaching Matt Ryan back in Penn Charter days. He's the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. I had 5 pros in the Penn Charter classroom at the same time. Chris Albright, who's currently the general manager of Cincinnati, Matt Ryan, Rob Kurz, who went to the NBA, and Chris and Sean Singletary, all these stud athletes. And guess what they did? They all did a chapbook too. That was 20 years ago. They've all done chapbooks. But let's just scroll through, look at Cavs. Here's his devotion. Here's his dad. Here's his other brothers. He's got 4. He's actually quoting his dad. Some people quote their dad, their mom, coaches. Shakespeare rarely comes up. A lot of rap music, right? Comes up. Table of contents. This is all the stuff they produced in my classroom and throughout, and about the design concept. Okay, here you're getting to view Cav's formation of his personality. And he is a type A male personality. When you read pieces in this book that he actually called from to write the foreword, some people don't know that probably. Tim Howard gloriously wrote the foreword to my book and Cav Sullivan. Well, Cav's like, I can't believe I got to still write from you. I had your class 4 years ago. Like, yes, but you and your dad said you could write me a foreword. And he's like, well, what am I going to write about it? I said, just go back in your chapbook. And I put some little post-it notes on pieces that he kind of called together. So here you see them sounding off. In his introduction to his chapbook, he talks about how his dad put the ball in the crib for him to roll around in, and he got out and he started playing. He has this story embedded in his introduction, though, where things weren't going so well for him. He tore a quad, or had a quad injury for a while. He didn't perform well in Europe. He was off the radar screen for a while. And then he came back at the U17s here, and he said he killed it. In this paragraph right here, he talks about beating England and doing the teacup, but doing the teacup wrong. Right here, I scored precisely in this minute. After that, he got the ball and sending for a hot dog. Sometimes I have to look this up. I didn't know this. Sending for a hot dog means you're doing something outrageous that's probably not gonna score. But no, it's not ChatGPT. That's Cav's voice. So part of the whole thing, I get to know them. They get to know me, and they get to write a book that's a bound book that collects artifacts, mostly in writing, some visual, a lot of pictures from around the building, a lot of soccer pictures, and it becomes a part of a classroom book. And then in conclusion here, well, what about the book? Well, I always make them do 2 books. One is theirs to keep forever till their mom or dad throws it out when they go to college. And the other one goes into a classroom library. Because here's what's brilliant and why I continue to teach. I only continue to teach because I love, and my boss loves, the fact that I teach writing. Because the next year, the next 9th graders come in on the first day of school. Remember what I told you I always ask them to do? Best teacher coach story, right? That's what we write the first couple of days of school. I hand out Cav Sullivan's chapbook, Kellen LeBlanc, who's a pro, Neil Pierre, who's a pro, Connor Murphy, who is going to Notre Dame next year. They know these guys. Andrew Craig is going to Michigan. I hand out their books and I tell them, go to the table of contents, find the best teacher coach story, turn to that story in the book, read it, spend 3 minutes reading, sound off. What did Andrew Craig, who was his coach, did he sound off? Tell me 3 details that you remember. Now write your own. And that's how my class builds on top of one another, and how I've been able, luckily in my life, to assemble in my daily life things that I care dearly about. I love teaching, I love writing, and I love soccer. And I get to do exactly what I want to do almost every day. So yeah, I don't think we're going to go through any of these clips right now. It would be lovely to turn it over for some questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. That was absolutely fantastic. And your enthusiasm is infectious. I think it all makes us want to be in your classroom, for obvious reasons, to be young and dreaming, of the future of sports. So we'll go ahead and open up for some Q&A. Actually, if you want, Mark, maybe you can go ahead and I'll cut the screen share here so we can all see everybody a little bit better. And
Sure.
there we are. No, I can't seem to. Or maybe you have to, if you could
Do
do
I have to do something?
Yeah,
Let me
if
see
you
if I can
if
find
you
a
can-
button.
There you go. That's perfect.
Good.
Excellent. Great stuff. Excellent stuff. Well, would anybody like to kick off with an initial question or a comment, or just to pick more of Mark's brain on some of this fascinating stuff? We can also obviously talk as well about the book. I think there's certainly some space in the Q&A for that as well. So I'll just go ahead and open the floor up if there's anybody who would like to begin. Ed, please.
I'll begin. Thank you for that very much. That was, as Kevin just said, very inspiring. At SASH, we get questions from students and from educators frequently, and I'm I'm curious to know about how you develop the curriculum because I'm not an educator, but I guess there are core standards that you need to make and or to meet and things like that. What are some of the challenges involved with that? I mean, you had an experience, vast experience as an educator before you go into this soccer environment, but how do you meet the soccer history with the core standards and that sort of thing? Very
Great.
curious to know more about that.
Yeah, just to touch on it briefly. And first off, thank you for all of your efforts and all of your writing and all the things that you've done. Bravo. I mean, I use your stuff and the stuff of others. So seriously,
Thanks, man.
historians are keepers of the flame. The answer is complicated in so much as I'm an English teacher first. I am not a history teacher and I'm not a historian. I care very much about history and I care very much about soccer history and American soccer history in particular. But recall, I'm an English teacher and I'm a writing teacher. So the way I do it would be different than if you got a group of history people together or a college professor who has a one-off class on history. Around the web, people are aware. People are teaching, maybe some people, listeners right now, there are some people that are brighter than me that are teaching college level classes that are doing the history of soccer or the beautiful game or however they're structuring it. So there isn't one right way to do it. And the way I am doing it, let's be frank, is quite unusual. How many high school students in America come into a 9th or 10th grade class and they're reading a lot of soccer and they're writing a lot of soccer every day, every week, right? That has got to be untrodden ground. But specifically for me, my goal is to make students, I'm less of a historian approach that they know facts and progressions and epochs and changes. Although that's very important, what's more important to me is that they learn some of that stuff to know of our history. The fact that soccer's been around for 150 years, the fact that it got started in the late 1800s, and we can debate ad nauseum about where and how, but the fact that we had this league, where did the Open Cup come from? What's the crazy, jagged, wonderful, weird, and problematic history of our own federation? What is going on in the ASL and the NAF, right? They have to understand the general span of that. But in my class, what's more important is that they write, because I'm a writing teacher first. So that's why I'm interspersing stories of soccer history and soccer personalities and soccer personal stories with them writing their own stuff. Because at the end of the year, it's not so much for me that they know and can answer 100 questions objectively on soccer history in America, as opposed to feeling more comfortable about writing and feeling good about the writing aspect of it. And that's perhaps what makes me relatively different than most English teachers, because I could teach any kind of book, but I'm always going to make personal connections and try to get them to tell their own stories. So it's a fair question, but there's probably people here that are listening that are a lot better than I, trying to, and let me point this out. Anytime you get more than one teacher together to try to do a curriculum, you're going to have an argument. It's worse than having a political argument. You get 5 English teachers or history teachers together, some of the professors that are listening, if you've ever had to do an endeavor with bright people who function mostly independently and have to come together to create a document and talk about what's important to teach, you're going to quickly devolve into differences of opinions that are wonderful. Is incredibly difficult to do unless you have certain standards that you want to meet. So for me, I would say the history of American soccer, it's going to be a survey class on that. It's going to, and another thing, if I just taught it historically, that's important. People have taught to do this. I can't spend the first semester in the 1800s, right? You have to, the way I do it. If I don't teach some Mbappe, some Odegaard, some Players Tribune stories, talk about the World Cup, I'm dead in the water, right? They don't want to hear about the gold bugs. Okay, they don't want to hear about Archie Stark. They don't. Thomas Cahill, great, but you can't do it chronologically, at least for 15-year-olds. So I know I've thrown a lot out at you, but for me, it's a quasi-history. It could be dual listed history English class, but a writing component, because that's what I do well. Other teachers, you really, by the time you teach for 10 or 20 years, you figure out what you do well, what's important to do well, and for you to maintain your employment and then have fun with it. Who wants to be taught by a boring teacher, right? Make it fun, make it interesting.
I really appreciate you talking about using history in an English setting, because some of the questions we get are coming from a student asking about, the development of a ball. So now we're talking geometry, we're talking material science. We can talk about how the markings on the field develop. Again, we're getting the geometry there. I love how you're using the history to teach another subject, or also with another subject, if you will. It's I find that really inspiring, and we don't want to just silo history into history class. That's not how I'd like to learn my history, because going along with that is literature and music and art and film and philosophy, blah blah blah. And so why shouldn't it be the same? Why should I love that you're using that as a sounding board to get kids to developing their own writing skills, to develop a better sense of self, all of those things. But agreed, you're in a particularly special environment, but nevertheless, I mean, could you say something? You hit into it in the beginning. You're head of school. It seems the idea of teaching soccer history originated with her.
Yeah, sure. So
Is that right?
Richie Graham is a minority owner with his brother of Striker Partners with the Union. And then a couple years into that endeavor, the Union was founded, played their first game in 2010. Richie then created and founded the school in 2013 called YSC Academy. YSC doesn't stand for anything. So yeah, that's the school. But they created this school first. They had 15 students the first year. Now, I mean, let's just plug the Union for a second, the YSC. YSC Academy has produced in 13 years, 7 players who have played for the full United States national team, and they have amassed 106 caps. That is crazy to accumulate that amount of talent, to start them in a high school classroom, to train them on the field, and to work in tandem with the soccer coaches and then the academic side, and then to produce that amount of pros that level, not to mention the 33 and counting pros that are playing all around the MLS, the USL, and some abroad. So yeah, great success story. But what they realized in their first 5 to 8 years as the school developed, they had to figure out a lot of stuff, right? Richie was really trying to do what was going on in the ski schools in the high end in the Vermont, and say, hey, if we can do high-end education and rap for the ski day, we can do it for soccer. And that was his vision, because he and his brother went to a ski program. But the point about the soccer piece and the education was, listen, these guys are graduating, going on to bigger and better things, often in college, sometimes on the pro level, but they really don't understand that much about their own history. And listen, let's be honest. If you want to give kids this, I leave this book in there just to scare the kids. It's like, this is David Goldblatt's book. We've all probably read parts of it. He does short shrift to the American side. Listen, if I ever get to meet him, I love this book, hate what he's done for the Americans. In his next book, he doesn't even write that much about the Americans. And the stuff that he writes about Americans, I would love to have it out with him. He has some stupid anecdote about playing in Indiana in like one paragraph in his next book. Come on. But I put this in there to remind him, quit complaining about the Ed Farnsworth, SASH article I'm having to read. And it's like a dead rat that lives on the edge of my thing. So back to my head of school. Listen, they got to know something about soccer. And I said, well, listen, you can't do it in a week. You can't do it in a month. He said, well, okay, do a whole class. When I started doing it, and this is where guys, and for those of us you've read, listen, but all of us, many of us have written lots of kinds of stuff. I'm just being honest. It doesn't lend itself necessarily as good as a lot of the stuff is in there and that we've written and I've written and Brian Bunk's stuff and your stuff. It's not necessarily always easy. Actually, it's very difficult to teach that to a 14 to 15-year-old.
Sure.
You got to
Sure,
take pieces of it. And that's led me to say, okay, I'm good, me, Mark, at writing a story and telling something in 1,000 words. So I'm going to try to write my own version. And I retrace the steps of a lot of people and many books and people that come there before me to do my own version, if you will. It's not quite as academic as David, but it retraces Wanger and stuff, but it retraces his steps closely. He's got some great moves, right? But that was the point. You have a boss who believes in you, who knows you have a talent to teach kids, and on top of that is now going to allow me to create a course. I know that I'm very lucky because many people have bosses that don't allow them that much freedom and creativity. So I'm lucky.
Fantastic. Anybody else have a question for Mark? Justin.
Yeah, Mark, thank you for that. Fellow Pennsylvanian, I'm from Pittsburgh originally, but I married, my wife is from Central York, so I'm familiar with that area as well.
Where may I ask? Because I'm from Wrightsville. Hello, Mary.
Yeah,
You know?
I'm gonna Emmetsville.
Emmetsville, yes. Emmetsville, I think.
Yeah. It's right near the York dumbbell
Yeah.
barbell. Yeah, right near the. I know that's
right on 83, Route 83, going to Harrisburg.
Exactly. Yeah. I wanted to thank you first of all for this today and for the book. I tried to explain to my family who has to put up with me during this insufferable period that it's not just the World Cup that gets me so excited. It's that for some reason every 4 years this is when the content comes out. This is when we're going to get the new books on soccer in the United States. It's like we save them all up for this amazing point. It's the documentaries and the docu-series that are coming out left and right. You know, we have the summer of '94. We got the Roku channel has a docu-series. Vice has the soccer content beyond the games has been amazing for this summer. So I really wanted to thank you for your contribution to that. I've loved reading yours. And kind of comparing and contrasting because it came out around the same time as Leander's book about the men's national team in particular. And so I've appreciated both of those. So my question for you, in addition to all that is primarily two parts. One, was there one part of this in particular that you found more challenging than any other when you engaged in this project? Was there one part that was more challenging or maybe even more surprising as you you mentioned it being a 3-year project? So that's kind of my first question. And my second question would be if anything else about the content that's come out recently, whether it's the docuseries, documentaries, books, if anything else has really caught your attention or maybe surprised you as someone who's obviously invested so much of himself into this project recently.
Yes, great questions. Let me take one at a time if I can. The most challenging part for me was not writing the book, honestly, it was getting published. So, and I bet that there are people that are listening now and later that have had similar experiences. And just to underscore it, listen, it's opening up, but there are a lot of people in the publishing world that are just conservative and they don't understand the soccer tent and the soccer project. And like you alluded to, every 4 years, there's a spate that comes out and then it goes relatively dormant. Instead of a stream, we have this weird spigot effect. So trying to convince, and I was lucky. I mean, my book I had three publishers that were willing for a contract. And I think I was really lucky and rare. They were smaller publishers. And also because Leander's book was out first. And that's another thing. How many times I get somebody, listen, we already have a book out there. We can't have more than one. I'm like, listen, the soccer world has 50 million people in it, right? You know, I know that many people are reading books. Like I'm in a meeting with Triumph Books. I'm just going to say this because I know I pissed them off. I go to the Triumph. These guys wanted my book too, right? But here's a funny anecdote. I get on with the editorial. One guy's got like 50 football helmets behind. I'm already know him in his like behind you, you got books and you got soccer stuff like some of you. The Triumph guys got 50 books. And when I went to the website, they have gridiron football, tennis, baseball. You know what they don't have? Soccer. So that was the first thing I opened up with. You guys, I was cocky about it because I was fine. Like I know I'm going to get a deal because I got other fish in the sea. But I'm like, guys, you don't even have a link that you can press for soccer books, right? And with all due respect, I don't see any soccer paraphernalia hanging out. But let's talk about it. So the publishing journey, as everybody knows who's tried it, is very difficult. The amount of time it takes to get an agent that believes in your project and then to write the book, what do they call that? The whole book, 60, 80 page document that reviews the literature and tries to sell your story. I had to do this while I was teaching and still had half the book to write. So for me, because I was a rookie, I'd written a lot of stuff that was short, magazine writing, op-ed writing. I knew that game, if you will, but trying to get a book published and following in the steps of those of you who have done it, to do that in the midst of a full-time job when I'm teaching, writing the same chapter, teaching it to my kids, then rewriting it because they didn't understand parts. I mean, I had a great crucible as a writer to do it was difficult. And to go a little bit further, the other difficult part, frankly, was writing about the 1800s. And again, I relied on the work of those who have come before me to try to tell the story of what's happening in the 1800s and into the 1910s. Was more difficult for me as a writer to try to make it interesting to a 15, 18-year-old, someone new to the soccer tent, than the stuff that's quote unquote more modern. For me, by the time I got to the 80s and I could bounce around between the USSF, the MLS, that became an easier project for me as a writer. But getting published was a major pain in the neck, and it's still filled with a lot of negativity about soccer. Publishers, even today, it's getting better. They love publishing stuff that complains about soccer. I detest that notion. No, we have to be positive. We have to be confident. We have to be optimistic about who we are, our tent, our story. It's expanding. Stop complaining about it. Get in the tent or shut up.
Wow. I think we could almost end on that note, I suppose. No, we shouldn't. That's great, Mark. Wow, that's fantastic. Anybody else have a follow-up? Or Justin, do you want to pick up on anything else there? Or
Well, I was going to say I definitely agree with your perspective. I mentioned from Pittsburgh. If we had one book about the 1970s Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, that's kind of the argument that you're making, is just because we have one doesn't mean we have the full story, doesn't mean we have everyone's perspective. It would be ridiculous to say, well, someone's written that book, so we're done now, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, right? There's so many stories to tell. Soccer is going to continue to grow, but we're dealing with like I was in the most conservative field there is for a while. That's the law. And I'm also in the most liberal field as a teacher, where I find very comfortable. But, the publishing people, and maybe there's people who've had experience with that, they're curmudgeons. They're negative. They don't want to take risks. And most of them don't understand soccer, let alone the fact that the soccer community is complicated but wonderful. They just don't want to take a risk on it. And it's unfortunate because, we're getting there, but it's real slow. And we're all fighting on the same team. When I say fighting, it's people who write about soccer and care about soccer, trying to open up doors for yourself and for others. It's difficult getting better.
Outstanding. Well, if nobody else, I wanted to pick your brain on this because I think, Mark, this would be something that might also have resonance for everyone else within SASH, and then people who would be listening to this in the future and might be doing some other research or writing. As a teacher, as an educator, you are using historical material all the time. And you're using a lot of stuff that's produced inside of SASH and by SASH members. So what is missing from your perspective? What would you like to, when you've been trying to do an interesting writing exercise, or you want to pick up something that is of contemporary relevance in the game today, and you're bringing that into your classroom, and you want to have a historical anchor? All of those types of experiences, and I'm sure there have been many moments in the last years that you've been doing this where you've said, I did not find the article I needed for this, or the little story about this, or no one actually asked this historical question. What would you suggest to all of those SASH members and people listening to fill in the gaps? What are the gaps that you've seen in the historical material that you think SASH members or others or yourself, maybe you're working on some things that would help fill that and make your educational work even more fruitful?
Yeah, I don't have an easy answer to that question because it's a great question, but it has a lot of different angles to it. One angle that I want to point out is that teachers, just like historians or professors, we're all different. And what works for one teacher is not going to work for another. Some teachers who might be teaching history of soccer may want the material canned for them, created for them with the kinds of questions or prompts, right? They want to make it easy. They want to almost get to it. But now, since there's ChatGPT and stuff, you can now create it quickly as a teacher. So the first thing I'm going to say to you, because for a while there, historians were probably thinking, well, maybe we got to get some curriculum guides together, get some other type of secondary materials together. I don't think that that's necessary anymore for two reasons. Teachers are all different. And those who are really drilling down are going to want to do their own, and they don't necessarily need that type of help. Number two, with ChatGPT now, you can insert it in some of these, and they can do it very quickly. So answer the question off the top of my head, I would just say to keep plugging away and chasing stories. Stories. Someone's got to write a story about Archie Stark, right? Thomas Cahill, all these characters, the leagues. These stories are what that a person like me, if you find a story and you're already doing this, but just keep doing it, chasing down the stories, finding something interesting, tell the story, get Ed to put it on the website, embed some photographs in there, maybe have some questions embedded in there on the side, like some interesting things social media wise. That's where I'm going now because I'm learning and opening up my own website and working with my kid who's in the building. I'm still learning now about Instagram and websites. And that's where some really cool stuff can happen. But again, that's above my pay grade. You know what I'm saying? The actual way that it's presented on the website and to have sources that are linked in there and going and the navigation links that the kids are so easily can do now. They're just way out ahead of us. So I don't have any answer to that. Find the story, make it rich, think carefully and strategically about how you are presenting it, which you've already done a great job on SASH as it's grown in the last, 27 years.
Well, no, that's very helpful. Thank you so much, Mark, because we have talked a number of people, and I know Ed's thought about this as well, the curriculum guides thing as being something that should be done. And what you're seeming to suggest is maybe that's not really where energy and resources should be put into. So that's very helpful. Anyone else have some follow? Well, maybe a last follow up. We're coming close on to 90 minutes, but anyone else want to pick Mark's brain on anything else or on his book as well? So what's next then, Mark? What's your next project? No, that's the word. It's the one that everyone who's just finished a book hates the most. It's like, what's your next one? And you're like, ah. So
No, because I'm in the front row seat with elite athletes within a unique program that's producing like a furnace, kids that go directly to the pros, on up to a Cav Sullivan, a unicorn, to people that are going into college at a high level. What I seem to have that's rare is access to stories about youth development. So my agent and publisher has talked about that they're really open to other things. But I do think I want to write more about that because of the people and the kind of coaches and the kind of characters that I know that are producing some of these pros. This would not be a book perhaps for a wide audience, but there is a number of people that are talking about American youth development and what are the do's and don'ts. It's not do's and don'ts. I don't write like that, but basically stories about, what is youth development in America, what programs are doing good things, what parents for those types of athletes. So I'm really excited about that, not because I know that much about it, because I've been able now to get to people who do. And that's really important for any writer or historian, right? Getting someone to talk to you who knows more than you do. So I've been lucky in that regard.
well, and I imagine dealing with Richie, and as I mean, I was glad you mentioned the Burke Mountain Academy in Vermont and all of his experience connected to that, because there is so much more that could be written about youth development, backgrounds, histories, and not just specifically focused on soccer, but across multiple sports. There's so many different experiences, and I don't think anyone's written anything a good real summary of what the IMG Academy was for,
Sure.
great, like everybody knows about it. There have been great news articles, Soccer America articles. They've done, class of so and so 20 years down the line, but no one has done a real exploration of those types of topics. So that would be a fantastic project. We look forward to that future SASH session from you, Mark, on that. Well, I guess if no one else has any other questions, I have a closing word just before we finish. Please, if you would all help me thank Mark for an excellent, informative session today. Really, really, really wonderful. These truly help stimulate further research into soccer in America. I will say a brief word to remind everyone to tune in to our next SASH session on Friday, the 7th of August. And we will have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Joe Machnik, familiar to everyone who's been watching the Fox World Cup coverage, who will be speaking about his new book, From the Sandlots to the World Cup. So please mark your calendars for Friday, the 7th of August, and we will see you here next month at the Society for American Soccer History, which is your home for preserving the heritage and chronicling the history of American soccer. Thank you all very much, and see you soon.